Like many series in the SEC, Alabama has owned this one in recent years. However, looking at a number of offseason projections and prognostications, this date in Fayetteville, one that people have tabbed as a possible pitfall for the Tide. We've got Stephen M. Smith from Touchdown Alabama on the line to help us break it all down. Stephen, how you doing today?
Doing great, Mark. Fantastic. As you mentioned, you got Fayetteville this week. You go to Donald W. Reynolds Razorback Stadium up there. It's crazy how they call on those Hogs, and Sam Pittman has done an incredible job with that program. Drew Sanders, former Alabama linebacker, now at Arkansas, he's having a good season. Bumper Pool, you know what he does. It all starts with that trigger man, KJ Jefferson, who can beat you in a lot of ways, throwing and running. Arkansas had that game against A&M. Unfortunately, could not tighten the belt there and get that. But they're going to come into this game with a lot of confidence. Upset that they lost against A&M, so it's going to be a fun matchup.
KJ Jefferson tried to hurdle some of his offensive linemen, get into the end zone, would have made it 21-7 Arkansas. Of course, that became a scoop and score for Texas A&M that tightened the belt, as you mentioned, at 14-13, and they took it home from there. And, of course, the doink off the top of the upright, something we've rarely, if ever, seen. Crazy ending to that rivalry matchup there. You can catch Stephen's show In My Own Words right here on YouTube, In My Own Words, every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 6 Central Time. All right, let's talk about the Tide. Let's get the injury list out of the way. It's not too rough considering 4 games already in the books for Alabama. They're a pretty healthy football team.
Pretty healthy group here, Mark. I mean, against Vanderbilt, they did sustain some bumps and bruises there. Cameron Latu, senior tight end, got hurt on a play, hobbled off the field, but managed to get fine in the medical tent with Jeff Allen and his staff and get right back out there into action. So he's okay. Jordan Battle had a slight hamstring issue. It seemed that he was okay. Nothing bothered him. The lone big one was Byron Young. Had to be carted into the locker room. A lot of people thought, this does not look good. Senior defensive end, who's had a lot of production here where this program is concerned. But per Nick Saban, the x-rays came back negative. So no tendon out of place, no ligament out of place where Byron's ankle is concerned. It is a high ankle sprain, and those things can be highly tricky because sometimes you feel like you can move on it. Sometimes you feel like you cannot move at all on it. And when that happens, Saban trusts the medical staff as to, do we put this guy out here? Do we not put this guy out here? Do we rest him more? So we could see Byron Young not go this game against Arkansas, and then they bring him back against Texas A&M. We'll see where the medical staff handles this, but he is listed as day-to-day. But Byron Young, the only big one. Also, we did see 3 wide receivers who were banged up a bit in fall camp, that being the likes of JoJo Earl, Tyler Harrell, and Aaron Anderson. They all dressed out for the Vandy game. JoJo Earl, Tyler Harrell both had foot fractures in the preseason. Aaron Anderson had a bit of a knee issue prior to fall camp starting. So it was good to see all 3 of those speedsters at the receiver position dress out, go through pregame drills. All 3 of these could be back by Arkansas, or at least 2 of these 3 could be back for Saturday's game. But if not, then all 3, we could definitely see all 3 for Texas A&M. So Bama, relatively healthy at this time right now. Got some bumps and bruises, but hopefully from an offensive standpoint, it could get some big speed back either this Saturday or next week.
Folks, please like the video. It's a simple task, helps us build the channel. Head on over to Stephen's work Monday, Wednesday, and Friday right here on YouTube, In My Own Words, as you see on the banner there, 6 Central Time. Give Stephen a call, talk Bama, talk the SEC. All right, through 4 games, the Tide season's defined by the matchup at Texas. The best team they played, the most difficult game, obviously went right down to the wire. It's a win. People look on that game, though, as seeing some chinks in the armor. And probably the biggest one that's brought up is the wide receiver core and the lack of big-time over-the-top playmaking ability. How do you see that group progressing? How do you see their roles forming at this point? And do you think that there is a guy that could stand out to be something of what we've expected Alabama receivers to be in the last 10 or 15 years.
Well, Mark, the one thing people got to be happy about, especially where the Alabama faithful is concerned, Bryce got that connection going with those guys against Vanderbilt. Number one, Ja'Cory Brooks had a big day, the former four-star from South Florida in the 2021 class, and at 6'2", 196 pounds. Coach Saban loves Brooks, his toughness, his competitiveness, the way he goes up and gets the ball. He can separate from defensive backs with his speed, also his route running. He did have 6 catches for 117 yards, 2 touchdowns. And I think, to me, he needs to be the primary guy in this room. He needs to be the primary option on the field, because it's when he's playing well that it opens up Jermaine Burton even more. Burton, who had 4 catches for 94 yards. It opens up Trayshawn Holden more. Holden had 46 yards receiving with a touchdown. Kobe Prentice, the freshman, continues to play well. So, I know it's not the Jameson Williams effect that we saw a season ago, but there is a lot of talent on this team. And there's a lot of guys that do have speed, that do have playmaking ability. It's just being able to script this thing out to get all of these guys the ball. Because then you also have to mention, Cameron Latu. Alabama hasn't gotten him really going at tight end, and he's a mismatch. And then you have Amari Niblack, a 4-star tight end from South Florida, a freshman that Coach Saban really likes, and they're trying to get him going as well. So I know it's one football, and a lot of mouths want that one football, but it's about scripting out the best way to get all those guys involved. However, I did see against Vanderbilt that Bryce and the receivers, there was more of a connection, there was more of a chemistry, there was more of an understanding of run your route, break it off, work back to me, let me see you, I can get you the football against Vanderbilt versus what we saw, against Texas. And a lot of that was, yes, the crowd played a big role there at Texas Memorial Stadium, but also Texas secondary, they had a pretty good group out there. They did not allow the Alabama receivers to just get open. And then the game plan by Gary Patterson and that whole group down there defensively, Steve Sarkisian had that group ready to go. And for a guy that's repped against this Alabama defense for a long time, Sarkisian, offensive coordinator for 2+ years, he knows what Nick Saban likes to do, and he had a strong script for that. But I felt like against Vanderbilt, Bryce Young and these receivers, especially Ja'Cory Brooks, got more understanding in terms of that chemistry together.
Folks, please like the video and share the videos out on social media. Not everyone knows that we're here. Best discussion, debate, and analysis of college football every day. We got Stephen M. Smith on the line. You can catch him right on Twitter, as you see on the handle right there. Monday, Wednesday, Friday. I can't tell you enough, encourage you enough to head on over there to check out Stephen's show right here on YouTube. In my own words, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, 6 Central. All right, I'm going to go to concern number 2. And again, Stephen, understand, I watched every play of the Texas game, and I've seen little else, much like most of the nation. We were focused on that one, haven't seen a whole lot until they dive into SEC play. And, of course, I'll be locked in on this Arkansas game. And concern number 2 would be the offensive line coming off the issues against, namely LSU and Auburn in 2021, then coming into this game. And we see the beautifully executed Chase McClellan play on the right side of the line. And then after that, some issues. So where do we stand along the offensive front?
Well, the main thing here, Mark, is going to be having Tyler Booker, the freshman from IMG Academy. He's got to start at one of those 2 guard positions, because when he's been in the game, he has provided a toughness and a dominance that Alabama, and a physicality and aggressiveness that Saban wants up front. And I understand Javion Cohan and Emil Ekiyor, they bring more experience. But when you have a guy that's a freshman that everybody's talking about, he's nasty, he's aggressive, he's physical, he's mean, he can do this, he can go. And all of these adjectives are describing Tyler Booker. You got to get that young man on the field as a starter and let him go to work. On the right side, J.C. Latham has been tremendous at right tackle, and we all knew he would be good. Coming in that 2021 class, he was the most highest graded offensive lineman in that class. We all knew that Latham could be something. I think Darian Dalcourt has improved a lot in terms of snapping the ball consistently at the center position. and being able to run, block, and pass protect. So I think the group has started to gain that mindset of its position coach, Eric Wolford, coming over from Kentucky. The question is, how much does Bill O'Brien rely on the run game as an offensive play caller? We know coming from the NFL, O'Brien has worked with the Tom Brady's. He's worked with the Deshaun Watsons and guys of that nature. But at Alabama, it just seems like he's not really allowing the run game to truly, I guess, form, because in the first 3 to 4 games, you're seeing Alabama, 14 carries among all the running backs, or 15, 16 carries among all the running backs. You're seeing a guy like Jahmyr Gibbs, he's getting, 2 carries, and that's not normal. That's not natural. Now, of course, Jahmyr Gibbs at the backfield as a receiver, I mean, he's dynamic, and you love that and you enjoy that, but you're seeing where, guys are not getting the touches out the backfield that you're used to seeing those running backs get. And that's become a concern here for the Alabama faithful is, are we neglecting the run game that at one point in time we were so used to seeing being an effective part of the offense? So I don't necessarily see it as the offensive line. I think they're growing and getting better. It's the question of how much does Bill O'Brien really want to involve the run game?
And with all the concerns I bring up, that is a great point that against Texas, Bill O'Brien got Jahmyr Gibbs involved, and Texas never found an answer for that. And that was a consistent, I think he caught 9 balls that day, a consistent use of him against the Texas defense. I'm going to go to the well one more time on this Texas game and go to concern number 3, the secondary. And I know Texas is loaded. Jordan Whittington, and, with Jatavian Sanders and, of course, Xavier Worthy, and we could go down the list, as loaded as Ohio State, USC, one of the great wide receiver rooms in college football in terms of talent. But there was a lot of legitimate pass interference calls against Bama. Guys seemed to be a little bit lost, got a little bit urgent and locked in the moment, and grabbing and holding, and just in regards to not playing the kind of pass defense that Nick Saban demands.
Right. And the crazy thing about that, Mark, was in the first half, Xavier Worthy got off in that first half, did a tremendous job, and got by Kyrie Jackson several times and catching big plays, including a few huge chunk plays. But when Alabama brought in Terrion Arnold, redshirt freshman off the bench, he actually did a strong job of limiting that production in the second half from Xavier Worthy. So Arnold has become one of the 2 corners that Saban has grown to trust, has grown to really like out there on the boundary, and he has played well since that second half when he got in there against Texas. And across from him, you have Kool-Aid McKinstry, of whom he has moments where, yes, he does get burned at times, but he also has moments where he does lock in. He creates those pass breakups. He plays in perfect phase. He plays strong there in coverage. So the secondary is kind of that bend but don't break ordeal. It's not like in years past where you had a Patrick Surtain who would just shut down a whole side of the field, or you would have a Levi Wallace or an Anthony Averett or a D. Milner or a Drake Kirkpatrick that you just could say, hey, son, you take this whole side away. Don't let this guy get nothing. And you knew that was exactly going to happen this time around in Alabama football. It's, there will be some plays made against you, but be able to flush that and still fight and still battle. And I think that is what Nick Saban is seeing from Terrion Arnold and Kool-Aid McKinstry at this point. And it's a good thing that you do have veteran safeties in Jordan Battle and DeMarco Helms, both seniors, that can control a lot of that conversation. And then Brian Branch, who's had experience the last 2 years at that star position, he's playing great ball as well. But in terms of just the corners, I think Terrion Arnold, when he came in as a backup against Texas, played well, showed some really good things. He's grown since that game. And then Kool-Aid McKinstry, kind of that bend but don't break mentality with him.
Bama, Arkansas, 2:30 Central Time game in Fayetteville, CBS game. Bama's a 17-point favorite. I really don't care what happened with Arkansas and Texas A&M. I can't be convinced that Arkansas is not a top 15 team in the country. They are that good. I think they're in that range. What are the particular matchups that concern you, and how do you see this one possibly playing out?
The matchups right here for me, Mark, it goes back to one of the things that you mentioned when you look at the Alabama secondary and these receivers for Arkansas. Trey Knox is really good. And then you got Hazelwood, the young man that transferred in from Oklahoma. Burner, really, really big time speed. So how do the Alabama DBs combat that? Because KJ Jefferson is going to want to get that ball to those guys in space and let those guys go to work. Another interesting matchup would be, Arkansas's offensive line against Bama's defensive front. Arkansas normally breeds first-round linemen. They're just like Wisconsin in that way. They breed big-time offensive linemen. And these guys are going to go up against Will Anderson, Dallas Turner, Chris Braswell, Jaheim Otis, Justin Boyd. They're going to go up against this front right here. How does this Arkansas offensive line hold up against the Alabama defensive front? But also, can Alabama's defensive front get to KJ Jefferson early and frustrate him? Because when he's able to have time, not only can he throw, but he can also run the ball well. But also the big thing with Bama here, Mark, is, and this is what Pete Golding is working on this week, is how can I create pressure but still disguise my coverage to where KJ Jefferson can't read it? How can I bring pressure to keep him in the pocket that he doesn't break, contain in the pocket, but at the same time disguise my coverage on the back end to still sort of confuse Jefferson enough to where he has to read it and we can still converge on that? So that's the biggest puzzle piece that Pete Golding will be tinkering with this week. Is I want to bring pressure, I want to frustrate Jefferson, but I don't want to give him an angle to where he can break containment of my pressure.
Stephen, I'm interested in your take on Will Anderson. So coming into the season, most scouts considered him the best player in America, and obviously the stats were eye-popping. We knew that it would only be common sense that every offensive coordinator in the world was going to scheme against him and try to figure out how we need to contain him, and for him to be given the kind of opportunities to stack up the kind of stats that he would need for a Heisman push, even though he is probably the best player in America. And I see him with 7.5 tackles for loss and 4.5 sacks. So the production's been still extremely high. How are teams attacking him? Do you see any difference there? And in maybe there was a couple places during the Texas game. I'm not going to claim this myself, but I know a number of people thought they recognized a little frustration out of him because of Texas obviously game planning around him.
Oh, absolutely. What Texas did, Sarkisian rode Quinn Ewers a lot away from Will Anderson. He rode Quinn Ewers a lot, and if he wasn't rolling Quinn Ewers, what Sarkisian did was he had a tight end chip on Will Anderson, or he had a running back chip there, or he brought in an extra lineman chip there, or the fact that he had Quinn Ewers get the ball out quick and that Anderson doesn't have time to get back there. So they did different things, whether it was rolling Ewers away from Anderson's side, whether it was having a running back or a tight end chip on Anderson to frustrate him that way, whether it was Ewers, get the ball out, it's a hot read, get out your hands quick, and by the time Will Anderson got there, the ball was already out. A number of those different things frustrated Will because he's sack conscious. He wants to get those plays. He wants to get those numbers. So the best way to frustrate him and not having him have those numbers is you roll away from him, is you chip him a couple of times. If you get the ball out of your hands quick, you make sure that he does not have an opportunity to get that sack and have that ball still in that quarterback's hand.
Great stuff from Stephen M. Smith of Touchdown Alabama. And get on over to his show again right here on YouTube, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, 6 Central, in my own words. Stephen, enjoy the game. We appreciate you stopping by as always.
Appreciate it, Mark. Thank you, guys.